Well, welcome, fellow Rotarians and guests, to this Back to Normal Rotary meeting. Welcome. Thank you. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to now invite up Rotarian Jesse Schmidt to facilitate today's invocation.
Please join me in praying. Lord, thank you for the gift of this day, this food we share. Thank you for those that prepared it and those who will not have a meal today. Help us to welcome you in welcoming newcomers in our city, migrants and refugees and immigrants. God of all of us, grant us vision to see your presence in our midst. Give us courage to open the door to our neighbors and grace to build a society of peace in our corner of the world. Amen. And all the air conditioners, please.
Yes.
Bless all
Indeed. Bless the air conditioners for sure. Thank you very much, Jesse. Over the last year and some odd months, we have welcomed our guests, but have done so in a way that wasn't normal. We just asked everyone to stand and be recognized at once. But because we're back to normal, we thought we would give our guests an opportunity to be introduced one by one. And today, I'd like to call on our first one, Kevin Jorgensen. I believe you have a guest today. So bear with us. We're trying to get this done right.
Okay. Hello. My name is Kevin Jurgens. My guest is Jeff Gould. A lot of you know Jeff. Stand up, Jeff. Jeff is a storyteller, a writer, and an author, and past president of SME, like myself and several other people here in this office. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff, welcome. And Betty, who's going to be moderating today, has a couple guests also, so I'll give you an opportunity to maybe the guest. Does it work?
You got me on? Great. My guests today are Rebecca Kiso Knudsen and Muhammad Ahmed, and then we also, and I just met her, Chantel is our intern at the Center for New Americans.
All right, very good. Thank you, Betty. Welcome. Oh man, I'm going to make you sprint to the back of the room where none other than Angie has a guest as well. Happy birthday, Angie.
Well, thank you. The club's guest today is Janice. She's with the Union Gospel Mission, and she heard about all the great work our club is doing and wanted to visit. So please welcome Janice.
Welcome, Janice. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you for bringing guests. We always welcome our guests to Downtown Rotary, so thank you. Couple items of Rotary business. We are going to have this Wednesday Rotary After Hours from 4:30 to 6 at our wine bar, and you should have some material on your tables that talks about those specifics more in detail. So please come join us at our wine bar this Wednesday from 4:30 to 6. The weather will no doubt be warm and friendly for all of us. So beverages are going to be served, of course. Now we have two new member inductions today, and I'd like to now invite up Joni Johnson and Bill McGuckin, please.
Thank you, President Jason. Today, I'm honored to introduce Bill McGuckin, who moved here to South Dakota from New Jersey. I can't say the accent. You'll have to fill me in 2018. Bill and his wife, Michelle, who's originally from South Dakota, made the move with the goal of raising their 7 children in a thriving community while being closer to family. They are now the proud owners of Sylvan Learning Center of Sioux Falls, Mitchell, and Brookings, and the Oxenham Group. Bill is the founder and owner of the Oxenham Group, one of the fastest growing recruiting firms in the country, co-located in Sioux Falls and the New York metro area. Its focus is to enrich the recruitment industry through the alignment of personal goals with organizational missions in the areas of biotech, IT, nonprofit, and executive search. Bill has spent his career building high-performing teams and mentoring future leaders. He is dedicated to the servant leadership model, and his teams have been continually recognized for excelling in the areas of retention, engagement, growth, and services. Bill holds an MBA from Monmouth University and a bachelor's degree from Franciscan University. He regularly speaks with universities and businesses and groups about the dignity of work and serves as a mentor for junior achievement and the Genesis program. He's an active leader of the Priest Prophet King, which through prayer and brotherhood mentors men to help identify dignity and self-worth while returning to society from prison. His favorite pastime is coaching his children, all of them, in soccer and basketball, where he promotes good sportsmanship and a nasty defense. Please welcome Bill McGuckin.
Well, thank you, Joni, and good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. Feels awfully good to be able to say that. So 3.5 years ago, when my wife and I decided to move from New Jersey to come to Sioux Falls, to be close to her family, I thought, how bad can it be? It's a small town, and if you give me access to the Knicks and the Giants, and maybe I can meet some cool people, I'll get by. I'm a pretty tough guy. So we, negative 21 degrees, we packed up our car, and I moved from the 45th floor of the Empire State Building to literally the ground floor of Zeal. And I could tell you without a shadow of a doubt, it's been the best move my family and I have ever made. When I get exposed to the people in this community, the courage, their servant mentality, the passion, the intelligence, it's frankly disarming. And as a family, we feel challenged every day just to be better, whether it be through our church, the community, and organizations like this. So very humbled to be here. Happy to serve with every one of you. And thank you for the warm introduction to the community. I appreciate it.
Well, Bill, as a father of 4 children, I just don't know how you pull that off. Wow. All right, we have one more induction. Steve Sikorsky and David Owen, please come up.
Thank you, President Jason. It's my pleasure today to introduce David Owen. David Owen grew up in Rapid City, South Dakota, and attended the University of South Dakota. Go Yotes. Oh, thank you. Go Rabbits too. All right. David is the president of the South Dakota Chamber of Commerce and Industry, a private business organization that represents employers and manufacturers. He serves as the Chamber's policy analyst and lobbies full-time during state legislative sessions. David is the author of that wonderful program, Capitalism. Sons, Parker, who's a pre-med student at Augie, and Gentry, who's one of the main drummers at Washington High School. And Deborah works for the chamber here as a graduate of Augustana and the USD Law School. So let's welcome David Owen to Downtown Rotary.
Thank you. Steve and I attend the same church, Westminster Presbyterian, which is a plug which I expect to be fined. And he called me over kind of before session and said, your chances of getting into heaven would be much better if you were a member of Downtown Rotary. Which brought to mind, I do political debates at Rotary clubs, and that damn four-way test always haunts me. In trying to figure out how to react to that invitation, I was thinking about the four-way test and going to say no when the pastor walked by and said, Owen, given your line of profession, I would walk through any door that opens. So I'm thrilled to be back. I will tell you in all sincerity, I stand in the seam between the business community and public policy, and I was born to stand in that seam. It is a privilege to assess the needs and concerns of the business community. We need public policy. We need law enforcement. We need rules and educated workforce. We don't need to be overhauled all the time, and that is my privilege to be in that seam, and it's nice to be back with Rotary where I can get more comfortable with your four-way test.
Always fun to do the new inductions. Thank you, David. Thank you, Bill, for joining Downtown Rotary. And thank you, Joni and Steve, for your efforts to recruit new members. Okay. We are now going to move into the program today. And I would like to welcome Rotarian Betty Oldenkamp, who is going to facilitate today's conversation. Now, all of us, and most of us certainly, know Betty, but a little brief bio. Betty has served as the president and CEO for Lutheran Social Services of South Dakota since March of 2006. Prior to Lutheran Social Services, Betty served as the cabinet secretary for the South Dakota Department of Human Services, the state agency with oversight for the disability-related services. Betty dedicated 15 years of her career to public service. Betty is a native South Dakotan. She grew up in Murdo and graduated from Dakota Wesleyan University in Mitchell and attended graduate courses at Northern State University in Aberdeen. Betty was twice awarded a Governor's Award for Employee Excellence and received Distinguished Service Awards from Rocky Mountain Council of Community Mental Health Centers and Dakota Wesleyan University. Betty will introduce the guests and the panelists up here, but let's give Betty and our panelists a warm Rotary welcome.
Well, thank you, President Jason. It's great to be back with you live. Getting a little feedback, but I want to introduce my guests that are with me today, and thank you to the club for this opportunity to share some of the positive impact of refugee resettlement in this community. So with me, I have Rebecca Kiso-Knudsen, who is our Chief Operating Officer at LSS. Rebecca is approaching 20 years of service with LSS. For those of you who are active in the school-based mentoring program, Rebecca was a fresh new college graduate when she started that program with LSS. So thank you, Rebecca. And Muhammad Ahmed is with us as well. Muhammad is in our Center for New Americans, and he is celebrating, I believe today, his 7-year anniversary with Lutheran Social Services. And you're going to get to hear much more of Muhammad's story as we have a conversation today. So to begin with, we want to provide some context for the use of the terms refugee and immigrant. You hear them a lot. There are different connotations of those terms, and for our discussion at least, it's important that you have a context for what we mean when we use the term refugee. So with that, I'm going to ask Rebecca to share that with you.
So to start off, we'll just clarify that, and we always start conversations this way because there's a lot of confusion around these terms, but all refugees are immigrants, but not all immigrants are refugees. So just keep that in mind. The term refugee, at least as we're talking about today, is a term that's recognized in an international law. And individuals who are fleeing usually war, conflict, or violence in their home countries and are unable to return to their home country as a result of their classification in these areas: race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group, or a political opinion. It's always important to remember that no one chooses to become a refugee. But typically what will happen is an individual will flee, typically with very little notice, and they may have just the clothes on their back, flee to another country where they are housed and registered as a refugee with the UNHCR, United Nations High Council on Refugees, in a refugee camp. And from there, the process of applying for resettlement may occur. Not all refugees apply for resettlement. Some refugees will stay in a refugee camp and hope to return to their home country when the conflict subsides. So it's a very small percentage of individuals who have that refugee status who end up being resettled into a country like the United States. And I just want to clarify, I know there's been a lot of media attention on the crisis at the southern border. That is not what we're here to talk about today, though that is a different legal process that's happening. We're referring to the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program, which is separate and distinct from the unaccompanied minors at the border.
Thank you, Rebecca. And I know that it's one thing to hear about what that process is for getting that status to become a refugee. But Mohammed, you have personally lived that experience. You work directly with a number of people who have come to this community as refugees. And so, to the extent you're comfortable, would you share with us some of that experience of what it's like to have to flee your home country, to go through what they call vetting, and then the whole experience of being in a camp?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that question. As Betty told you that refugees, they didn't choose to be refugees. It's the life and the circumstance. I, being one of the refugees who grew up almost entire of his life, like almost entire of my life, I spent in one of the world's largest refugee camp. I'm not sure if it is now, but before it was. And it's called Dadaab. It's located in Kenya. So originally I came from Somalia. And my home country, Somalia, the reason why we ran was because of war. I was little, I was a kid. I remember a little bit about it, and I also know much more about what my parents told me. So my mother told me that we had to flee out of the country because of insecurity, the war. So we had to travel for 3 days, sometimes no food, no water, and we had to cross the border between Somalia and Kenya to seek refuge to the neighborhood country, Kenya. So at the border, we were received by United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, and we were welcomed, given tents and shelter and food. That's where we started to get registered as a refugee. I was never born to be a refugee, but the life and the circumstance made it to be that way. So I ended up staying in the refugee camp more than 20 years of my life. And the refugee camp life was not easy. It was challenging. And it was named after a nickname, which was an open jail. Refugee camp is not something that we can say someone can live or raise kids or maybe grow up there or become a grandparent or have a grandchildren. But if it has to be, then it has to be, but it doesn't have to be like that. So what happened is that At the refugee camp, people do not have any other hope. It's only either two alternatives. As I told you in the camp, life is hostile. Environment is very not friendly. The food ration is not enough. Unsanitized water, not enough health facilities. You know, you can imagine, name it. So with a few humanitarian organizations that come in and help us, we were able to survive, few of us, but many could not. Most of the kids will die malnutrition. So at the refugee camp, people have two alternatives. If your country gets better and gets peace, then you go back. If not, at least some few percentage who will be able to get a further life better situation, which we call a resettlement. Resettlement is not a right as a refugee, it's just a privilege. Not all people get resettled to a third world countries. So once you get to happen to be the lucky ones like me, then you're the special ones. So, and going through that process of resettlement is not easy too. I myself have experienced of getting to America. It took me for 7 years. I was not married, I was single. I finished my high school in 2006. And then I stayed in the refugee camp doing nothing, idle, because there's no any other thing you do once you finish your high school. You either get, few of us will get a scholarship to interact with the locals, because we had this nickname in the refugee camp. We call it an open jail. You cannot get out and you cannot come back in unless you're registered as a refugee. And the only way you can get out is only three alternatives. Either you're going for a resettlement into a third world country, or you're going for a serious medical attention to local hospitals, or you're going for a scholarship, which is very, very minimal. So I had to wait for 7 years. I had to go through a lot of process. I was first pre-screened by United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees to see if I'm eligible to be resettled or not. The most questions I've been asked was, why did I run out of my country? And what is the problem with me in the refugee camp? And why can't I not go back to my country? Being those, then they will still forward my case to a joint voluntary agencies or RCA, recently they are called, where they will write down your case and present it to different countries in the world, including Australia, Canada, US being the most leading before. So I happen to be lucky one to fall under under United States program. So after falling under United States program, I was so happy, excited to go to America because it was my dream country. Seeing America in the movies, LA's and all those places, it was a fun place. But I didn't know the winter part. I have never experienced. And I didn't know I was coming even to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I didn't know how I ended up being here. So what happened was, when my program was forwarded to that place, after 2 pre-screening with UNHCR, I had to go another very extreme interview with an organization called currently RCA, Refugee, by then they were called Joint Voluntary Agency. So those people will forward my case to an officer, USCIS officer. And the USCIS officer, he met me twice. The first time he interviewed me with the security questions and went and had to go through name check, security checkup, medical exams, fingerprint, biometric, obviously. Took my photos several times in several directions. I had to go through even with the DNA test with my parents, if they're real parents or not with me. It's not an easy thing. It took 7 years. I had to go remedical for about 4 to 5 times because the medical expires after every 6 months. And the security clearance expires after every 6 months too. So when my security is cleared, then my medical expires. So I have to go through the medical. So when my medical expires, then I have to wait for the security again to be verified. Anyway, finally, I was lucky enough to be called up for my flight. Then when I happened to come to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, a place I have never thought I would be, it was really a combination of two things. I was so excited to come and and experience a new life. Get out of the refugee camp and come and be in a free country, free world, where I can able to, move around, not stay in one place. And then I was also nervous coming to a place where it's new to me. The environment even is new because where I came from, it's a semi-arid area. The temperature goes about 36 Celsius degree, which is about 100 Fahrenheit. And then I came around August. August was so cold to me, coming again. September was coming in. November again, the snowflakes was coming. I was like, okay, I want to see what this looks like. Finally, it's been 7 years now. I happened to join, I had a little bit of experience of helping refugee kids at schools in the refugee camp. So I happened to apply as an EA, education assistant with Sioux Falls School District. And I was given the job to help the ELL kids, the English language learners, who are coming as a refugee like me, to help them catch up with the regular classes. I worked for about a year, and then the organization that received me as a refugee, I came as a refugee program through LSS. LSS received me and resettled me and gave me a shelter, a food, a place to stay, and I felt welcome. With that being, I thought about, you know what, Mohammed, how about you do the same job of doing the same thing that you had been, helped. So I joined May 2014 Center for New Americans, LSS, as a medical specialist, and then now I'm a full case manager. So the job that we do at LSS, in a nutshell, is that we first received the cases from all over the world, be it in Nepal, be it in Africa, Europe, Asia, anywhere, as a refugee. When they go through the same process that I did, I received the families at the airport. That's the most exciting part. I remember myself being received by a case manager at the airport too. So the most emotional part is at the airport, where I am receiving a family, and I'm able sometimes to speak their language, and they get so excited after traveling for 48 hours and being tired. You can feel it, and maybe they may not have seen anybody speaking in their native language. So I'll be the first guy showing up. Hi, salam alaikum, mafi antay, habari yako, jambo, ¿cómo estás? And all that, we all say. Also, I speak almost 4 languages. So I could feel the happy and the emotion on their face. Some of them will start hugging me as if they know me. Some of them will just burst shedding cry. Some of them will be like, oh, thank God, I finally see someone who speaks my language. Then that's where the conversation starts and the interaction between the client and I. Then start taking them to their apartment. Prior to that, I had to take, if it is winter time, I had to take with me seasonal clothing, obviously, because they will go through the same emotional trauma of winter that I have had. I understand, and then there's that culture shock, all that. Then I take them to their apartment and go through with them with cultural orientation, like the basic cultural housing orientation, showing them the bathroom, how to use the stove, all this technology and new modern things. Because in the refugee camp, we use firewood to cook. and 3 stones. You know, not this modern stuff where you can easily turn on the fire, just pops up. You know, it takes a long time to get a fire. From the firewood, you have to lit it, you have to wait, you know, and blow it sometimes, or maybe fan it, you know. So with that, it takes a little bit time for clients to adjust. So we give them an intensive cultural orientation. We also refer them to places like, you know, where they need to get help, like Social Security Office and DSS, Department of Social Service, to help them request the benefits if they're eligible. And also refer them kids to Sioux Falls School District to register them. And then also help them, also refer them to medical attention, because once they arrive here, they have to go through some medical checkup, including completing all the immunizations, because it's a mandatory to complete those immunizations, because they cannot able to apply green card or permanent resident card after staying 1 year here without having a complete health, you know, exam. So with that all, to be honest with you, it's a blessing kind of thing, welcoming refugees, bringing and reuniting, and, you know, bringing together families and bringing people to a new life, changing their life from what they were being to what they were gonna be.
Thank you.
I
so
am talking too much, am I?
I don't know why I'm here. I'll just
Only needed one question.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, you did great.
No, absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Mohammed. So Rebecca, we've heard a little bit about what happens when somebody arrives, but could you speak to really what the role of Lutheran Social Services is, how we initially become involved, the types of things that we provide?
Well, and all of this was reflected in what Mohammed said, so you're going to hear again, just from the bureaucrat this time. But the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program is an early self-sufficiency program. So there's support from the federal government for the first 8 months in country. So our goal as a team at LSS, and Mohammed is one of our dedicated staff, is to help individuals become integrated into their community and become economically self-sufficient. 8 months isn't a lot of time to get there, so our team has to start right away and doing all the things that Mohammed talked about. We're greeting folks at the airport, making sure they have the safe housing set up with basic essentials from day one, and then really encircling that family to try to determine, do kids need to be enrolled in school? Do we need to take them to their public health immunizations? What kinds of English language abilities do they have? What kind of work experience do they have? And try to connect them up with employment opportunities here locally. But the clock is ticking very, very quickly before that federal assistance ends. And so our team is having to respond really quickly. I don't know if there's anything else you want me to cover.
Great, thank you. So I think that gives you a little background on what it's like before someone arrives here in Sioux Falls. And I think got a little flavor of what those first few days are like when you're arriving in a country and you don't speak the language and you maybe don't see anyone who looks like you. But Mohammed, I'm wondering if you could share a little more about that whole process of how somebody gets a job and what kind of jobs do people get?
Yeah, thank you, Betty. As Rebecca told you, our main goal is to make sure the clients become self-sufficient. As a case manager, my job is to make sure to help them cross the river. What I mean is to help them, just show them and guide them to be by themselves in a certain period of time. It depends on individuals and families that are coming. Some individuals come while they know the language and they're capable of speaking the English language as soon as they arrive and be able to work. Some of them will take a little bit time So we had to register them to ESL classes with the program that we have, English as a second language. And as time goes, we also help them enroll a STEP class, which is a job class where we help them show how American companies or American jobs are done and how the interviews are conducted, because they must have not worked with people. Probably they have had few experience of farming, having their local businesses and all that. So it's an intensive orientation. It's not 1 day or 2 days, it's like weeks and even sometimes months. That being also, after the clients receive their social security cards in a mail, probably sometimes 2 to 3 weeks or 4, as soon as they receive, we try to help them place them in a job that is it's affordable job that they can do, that they can able to reach, that has access to transportation, whether it is bus or taxi or whatever it is. So with that being said, we also help them, drive them around, show them places, and give them orientation on where to take the bus from, where to take off the bus, how to ride the bus, and all that. And then we still also follow up with them during the interview process of their job. We get connected with the companies and bosses and email and exchange information. And they ask and they say, hey, we have 3 positions open in, it's Smithfield, Berry Plastic, Bell, those name it, So, and then we end up looking, and then we start training the clients and be able to, put them in that position if they can able, and then still do some follow-up, a 30 days follow-up, 60 days follow-up, 90 days follow-up, and even 1 year follow-up, and see if they have retained the job, and explain to them about the importance of having a job, and the consequences and the importance of keeping a job, and the consequences if they ruin their job. And explain about the lifestyle in America. It's not that coming to America, you're so excited. I know you have this high expectation. I did. I was like, wow. All those things that I saw in the movies, But when you come to the real life situation, things might not be the way you have seen it. You have to pay bills. You have to learn how to pay your rent. You have to learn how to pay utility, your car rent, insurance, everything. So it's not an easy process to go through. It takes a while for some clients, and some of them, they catch up quickly. So our main goal is to make sure they become self-sufficient. They are able to pay their rent as soon as possible.
And I just want to add some clarification, because sometimes I think there can be a perception that we're only in it for that first 60 days, 90 days, a year time frame. But individuals who come in with refugee status are eligible for services for up to 5 years.
Correct.
So our team can deploy in that. And I mean,
Correct.
Obviously the first 6 months is going to be the most intensive time frame for our staff to be involved with families, but as problems might come up, or there's a need for a job upgrade, or things, something that would require some additional staff support, we're able to do that, and do that with our clients.
Great. So I know when I'm out and about in the community, I always get a lot of questions on this topic. What countries do people come from? Do they speak English? How come they come to Sioux Falls? Lots of questions around that. I'm sure both of you receive those questions or similar ones in the community as well. So maybe just whoever wants to go first, what types of questions do you hear? What's the feedback that you provide, or the response you provide when people ask you those questions?
You go, Mohammed.
Sure. Okay. Those kind of questions happens. It's true. Not all people are refugees, and we, some people come from different places. I've learned a lot being as a case manager myself. Even though I grew up in a diverse cultural environment, a refugee camp that was like a combination of variety of people, people from different countries, mostly from Africa. Originally, I came from Somalia. I have had neighbors from Sudan, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Uganda, Rwanda, Congo, and all that. That being, Also, when I came here, I realized that we have people coming from Nepal, coming from Bhutan, coming from Thai. So with also that, it doesn't mean that if I'm Somali, I should come from Africa or Somalia area. There's a possibility that some Somalis are coming from like Europe as a refugee. Some of them are refugees in Europe because they tried their best level to go in there to seek for a better life, but then they got stuck there and they give up themselves there. And then after a long period of time, they happen to be resettled here. So refugees can come from all over the world in a process that's very seriously vetted.
And I would just, to echo what Mohammed said, the world's population of refugees shift as global conflicts shift. So the folks that we're helping to resettle right now aren't the same population groups that we might have been helping 10 years ago or 15 years ago. So our responsibility is to try to make sure that our staff is reflective of the populations that we're serving. Right. So Mohammed's ability to speak 4 languages is very useful to helping make people feel welcome and be successful in those initial days.
Great. Mohammed, I know that you are very involved in your faith community and that you've been involved in a lot of activities in the community and with youth. So share with us what motivated you to stand up as a leader in this community?
Well, I was hearing a soccer coach when there was an introduction of guests over here, and I was so excited. I was like, yay, we got a soccer coach. I'm a soccer guy. Back in Africa, we call it football, not the American football. I like, interacting with youth because youth are the most essential. And as a youth, I think if we don't get engaged, get at least have fun, then our mind is going to be used in a wrong way. So with that being, as a youth, I like helping youth who are mostly needing help, who are desperate, who are like, who need a job. Like we have a lot of youth who even have finished their high school, but still, trying to get into college or probably do not have tuition for the college and all that. So we try to make sure we engage and make them busy to make sure that we have fun so we don't get stressed and stay alone at home. I know how it feels like living alone without my family. It's been a long time, but at the same time, if you don't come out and you keep yourself in somewhere, then in health-wise, it will not be good. So with that being said, as a leader of youth, I always try to my best level to make sure that I get connected and get close to youth so that we have something to do and not just sit down somewhere, something that's much better effective for the community. Like, sometimes we go out there to make awareness. We volunteer sometimes for helping like elderly people. Sometimes we volunteer translating and interpreting documents. During the COVID-19, we help, a lot of documents interpreted and translated to different languages and make awareness about what is this virus all about,
Great, thank you. I think part of what we wanted to do today was be able to lift up that positive impact of resettlement in this community. And I know that there are members of this Rotary group that are refugees or immigrants that have become successful business owners. I know that there are employers who are members of this group that have could really attest to the commitment that they have from their employee workforce that's refugees. And I know over the course of time, some of you have been volunteer mentors with families as they have come in and have seen firsthand that resiliency of people who are refugees and come here to start that new life. And I just, before we maybe take a couple of questions, want to turn back to both Mohammed and Rebecca and see if there are other things that they want to lift up as examples of of what that contribution to the community is when we welcome refugees.
Thank you, Betty. Speaking of the progress of the refugees or individuals that come to specifically Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Sioux Falls, South Dakota, when I came 2013 August, was not as big as it is now. And I think you can even witness that. With that being, I have witnessed clients that I received them at the airport, zero income from refugees, zero experience of everything, including job and anything. Today, they are so successful, such that I myself could not be at that stage. Having helped walk them in their life, I could see them able to buy fancy cars, able to buy their own house, able to have their own businesses. How many restaurants we have here from all over the world? I'm amazed. Sometimes I come out and decide which one to choose to go and have my dinner, It's fun. And then it also gives me, a courage, such that when I see a client who has never driven a car and then passing by and saying, hey, Keswaka Mohammed, hi, and maybe they're able to speak English. Client who was speaking with me in their native language at the airport is telling me, no, I will see you tomorrow, So it's life-changing, changing people's life in a positive way. It's a blessing.
Yeah, and I would just reflect that if you talk with former refugees, that expression of gratitude for a new opportunity, a new chance is definitely something that comes out in hearing their stories.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you both. Before we take a couple of questions, I just want to share with you that if you're not aware that June 20th is World Refugee Day. And this year, with everything with pandemic, we didn't host our annual Taste of Cultures dinner event, but we are doing some social media around World Refugee Day. So look us up on Facebook through LSS and you can find a link to that. You'll also get to see another interview with Mohammed and one of our other new arrivals, Sarah. So you can take that in. And then the Breaks Coffee Roastery is doing a Coffee for a Cause Day for us on the 29th of June. So stop in then and have a great cup of coffee and learn a little bit more about refugee resettlement. And I think we have a few minutes to take a couple of questions if there are any. I know you guys aren't used to that question and answer format yet.
Thank you for that. Hello?
Yep.
So what can we do in this room to help specifically?
Well, volunteer. As Betty talked about, we have volunteers both in our English language classrooms, as well as volunteers who help us and assist, provide mentorship for new arrivals in the first months. It can be really helpful to have another friend or ally walk along beside families as they get acclimated to Sioux Falls. Obviously, contributions are always welcome in terms of financial contributions. And then we do take some donations for like basic household items to help with that new apartment setup as well.
And the thing that I would add to that question is, or that response is that the thing that every one of you can do is if you meet people or have that opportunity who have come here from somewhere else, whether that's as a refugee, as an immigrant, as a migrant, is to welcome them, to get to know them. That's the best way that there is to maybe turn the tide of some of the rhetoric is once you know someone on a personal level, you find that, hey, they're a person just like you.
Yeah, and culture and learning from each other too, it's very important. I have realized when I became a friend with American friend when I was a refugee here, I've learned a lot from them and they learned a lot from me. And from there, we break down the barrier between us, the communication barrier between us. Had we not spoke or become friends or talk about, our stories to each other, we will not have got along each other. Everybody will have had their own stereotypes, like Mohammed and Somalia people are like that. And then I could think this person is just like that.
My name is Qual. My voice is shaking because when you look around this room, I myself also is a refugee. And my father actually was in the same camp you were. And I came to the United States in 1998, and I've lived in Africa half my life. And the one thing that we should take away from this room is not the resources, is not the things that you give to us, is actually what the mission is hope. All the question you asked earlier when it says, why did you join leadership positions? And it's not for self-glory or vain or anything, but it's to give another person who's next to you hope. And I put myself in a lot of teaching positions. I have a lot of mentors who are actually here. We have Jeff here, and I put myself in those positions because it gives us access to those voices who are unheard. And I feel sometimes when you ask for resources, the best thing you can do is just sit next to them and ask them their story. So, and with the resources that I can say I can help you with is, we actually opened ACE Academy to give resources to refugees and I was that student who didn't speak English at all. And I speak 6 languages, but I didn't speak English. Doesn't matter how many languages you speak, but if you can't connect with another person and resonate with them, none of the stuff you provide for that person means anything. So what I would like to say is, how is LSS, how are you guys reaching out to the demographic of the children? Because those are the next generation. Those are the people who's gonna live in the community. And the second question that was very important is, why did we choose South Dakota? I moved here 6 years ago. I lived in 28 different states. The best thing about South Dakota is the community. The fact that someone can say, you can walk down Phillips, say, hey, good morning, how are you? I lived in the West Coast and East Coast, people give you a middle finger. Why? Because there's no connection, there's no soul, there's no connection there. So that's the reason why a lot of refugees and communities move to South Dakota, because people are people. So I just want to leave the room with that.
One more, maybe? I think he had a question, which is how are we reaching out to kids? And what I can say is we have really great partnership with the local school district that has gone on for years. And obviously that's just one touch point, but we have a pretty progressive school district that does a really great job of working with refugees and former refugees. So that's a primary way that we partner. Mohammed spoke to working with teens. We've had a special emphasis on working with refugees who arrive as teenagers, really trying to help connect them because it's tougher to come to the country when you're older. The language barrier, it's harder to learn the language. When kids arrive when they're younger, it can be easier to integrate, but we've really put an emphasis on working with that teenage population. And Mohammed, you didn't pick South Dakota, but you've chosen to stay here.
I have chosen to stay here because, as he said, they have nice people, to be honest. Yeah. I like South Dakota, and specifically Sioux Falls. Very cool, calm, less violent, and I want to stay as soon as it's safe.
Is there national data for amount of refugees communities take per capita? Is that a benchmark that we keep?
There is data that would show that. I don't know. I haven't looked at it recently. Some of you may know that new arrival numbers are dramatically lower than they have been in years, where last federal fiscal year, we had 50 new arrivals. If you go back 5-6 years, we had closer to about 500 arrivals. But there is we could talk about this for 2 hours probably, but there's a process that we go through annually where we're really looking at the success of arrivals into our community and put data together to really determine whether or not there's capacity there to accept additional arrivals. So it's something that we're doing on an ongoing basis, and then consulting with local stakeholders to make sure that there's adequate housing, that the schools can handle arrivals. Those kinds of things are all included in that process.
I think it's essential to know where we stack, and we celebrate so much about Sioux Falls and broadcast that to the rest of the country and world, and we need to make sure we're taking this into account. There's the growth creates a lot of opportunities and challenges, so we should make sure we're on top of that data.
And that's absolutely a philosophy that we have. For resettlement to be successful, the local conditions have to be good. I mean, there has to be jobs for people, there has to be housing for people, there has to be a community that can help folks be successful. And we see that as part of our responsibility.
I think it's all of our responsibility. So I commend you and looking forward to working with it.
Yeah, so we do track like the percentage of people that are employed within that 8 months, how long they are, if they still have that job in
90 days.
90 days, what their, wages are, those types of things. Part of why we've seen the numbers of arrivals historically in South Dakota is because there is opportunity. And some communities have sought that out. I think some of you are familiar with Huron and Aberdeen and some of the work that has been done there. We didn't start those efforts, but once refugees start arriving because they've moved from another country or another state in the United States, a secondary migrant, then we have an obligation to fulfill our requirements as the designated agency for that. So, yeah. All right. Jason. Thank you so much, everyone. You're a lovely audience.
Betty, thanks for facilitating today, and thank you to Rebecca and Muhammad for joining us and really telling the story of yours, telling the story of the others that have joined and worked with LSS and have joined our community. We've taken great pride at Downtown Rotary of really giving the floor to those people that can unpack complex subjects. So we look forward to unpacking because there's a lot to unpack here. Thank you very much. Please join us next week where the program will be the entrepreneurial ecosystem of Sioux Falls and its impact on economic development. Rotarian Cindy Peterson will be facilitating that. And then a reminder, this Wednesday, June 9th, we'll be having a social at our wine bar. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this first back to normal Rotary meeting. This meeting is adjourned. Betty.